long before this road was made famous during the Battle of December 1862, it was the heart of a community, spine of a small community, a little suburb of Fredericksburg that grew up here. Very interesting community, included a family of German immigrants, included one of Fredericksburg's richest and most famous men, John Marie, who lived up at Brompton on the Heights. But it also included this house, a rather battered remnant of what was here on December 13th. Now this house is interesting in a lot of ways. It's history in the battle, but it also is a pretty rare survivor of the type of places that most people in Fredericksburg lived in. Not the palatial, pillared buildings, but rather the simple two-story structure, maybe 800 or 900 square feet in total. In 1862, this was almost a brand new house. It had been built just before the Civil War, and it was owned by a woman named Martha Innis, or Martha Stevens, we know her best as today. During the battle itself, it would be caught in the midst of this maelstrom along Sunken Road. Now, Martha Stevens herself was a very interesting character, fiercely independent. She never went into a church or to the justice of the peace to marry. Instead, all of her husbands were common law, and she did that so she could retain her rights to her property. She owned this house, she owned the house next door, which no longer stands. She also owned a 90-acre farm in Mountain Spotsylvania Courthouse, very uncommon for a woman at that time. But she was also notable for a couple of other reasons. She was probably one of Fredericksburg's only female saloon keepers. She ran a saloon out of her house here. She smoked a pipe. Many people, locals, remember her for having done that. She occasionally was seen in the company of African American men, which was a taboo, of course, at the time. So as a result, she was something of a fringe person, a little bit of an outcast, a hard, harsh, rougher woman than most in Fredericksburg, and people presumed sometimes the worst of her. But in fact, her reputation would be rehabilitated by the war. The house she was living in at the time of the battle was right next door to us, caught in the maelstrom, and she apparently, according to legend, remained in it during the battle and would tend to the Confederate wounded on the battlefield. This, many, many years after the war, would become known and would make her famous. And so Martha Stevens is one of the most famous civilian characters on the battlefield today. Now the house itself suffered a devastating blow that day. It was not destroyed, but this house today includes probably as much battle damage on the inside of it as any house in America. On the outside of this house, there are a few bullet holes, a few hints of what went on here, but when you walk inside the Innis House, it's really a remarkable scene. This partition wall here is covered with bullet holes. Now, when the Park Service got this in 1977, we had no idea that these were here. This wall was covered by plaster. But when our architects stripped it away, they revealed this Swiss cheese wall. You can tell which direction many of the bullets came from. You can see that many of the bullets ripped out huge chunks of the pine boards in this wall. It is vivid evidence of the violence of that day, just as the Innis House is a silent witness to what went on December 13, 1862.